Hawking bot.
Henry Jones Jr.
was quite possibly the biggest action hero to come out of the 80s. Or this guy. Indy was inspired by the old adventure serials of the 1930s, 40s and 50s.
I don't believe in disturbing the dead myself. Found any treasure?
Indiana Jones was a teacher,
Part-time.
part-time archaeologist, and full-time macho bastard. His fists did the talking, or his trusty revolver, or his tongue. He was educated, suave, and rough around the edges. He was the everyman of action hero films, like John McClane, but less bald. He was an average guy, stuck in a unique situation, who made it up as he went along.
For me. I'm going after that truck.
How?
I don't know. I'm making this up as I go.
He didn't end up with a priceless artifact, usually settling instead for the girl. So to understand the devil's spawn that is Crystal Skull, you have to skip backwards to 1989, and the end of the trilogy. The last. Yes, that's the last. Crusade. Clue is in the title. 3 films. 3 parts. Dark middle act. The end of the story, with our intrepid heroes riding into the sunset. Harrison Ford didn't want to do any more, and just to confirm the fact gave the Indy hat to the American Museum. So with the death of potential groom replacement, River Jordan, they decided to recast the part of young Indy in the travesty that was The Adventures of Young Indiana Jones. Hit the screens in 1992. Sean Patrick Flannel Face. But apart from being fucking awful, young Indy created an improbable setup that he met every famous person at the start of the 20th century, and influenced them in future world events. T.E. Lawrence, Leo Tolstoy, Winston Churchill, Ernest Hemingway, Al Capone, Pablo Picasso, and Mata Hari. They even showed Jones as a 93-year-old man. Set in 1993, Ford even appeared in one episode as a 50-year-old Indy in an episode about jazz, which got Ford thinking about a return to the role. It was from the cancellation of the shit pie, that unfilmed episode which would have featured Indy and Renee Belloc. Prior to becoming enemies, out searching for crystal skulls together, all of these strands converged in Lucas, smelling a lucrative money spinner, began writing Part 4. It took from 1993 until 2007. Many rewrites and rehashes before Lucas got something he was happy with. In that time many rumors popped up. Search for Atlantis, King Arthur's sword, aliens, Indy's brother, son. To fit in with a more aged Ford, they moved the time from initially to the 1940s, and then the 50s, outlinked the Nazis, and then came rock and roll, greasers, Soviets. So the recurrent theme of the original trilogy was all about religion. Judaism, Hinduism, and Christianism. What could the 4th part be about? What the fuck? Aliens? What about Muslims? I have to mention the Crystal Skull logo dissolve, simply because after so many epic Paramount logo dissolves, in the first 3 movies, from mountain ranges to the Gonian Temple, they completely underwhelm the senses by going for the bizarre, with a Gopher Hill, and this isn't the end of the bizarre animal cameos. More on that later. So some teenagers are doing some off-roading and they come across some US military trucks, on their way to a hangar of some sort. However, the US military uniforms and trucks are cover for a Russian infiltration, and they shoot some guards dead before dragging poor Indy out of a trunk.
Russians. I hate these guys.
He has a sidekick too, and if you thought Short Round was annoying, you haven't met Mac yet, the most pointless character in the film, who keeps changing sides and refers to Indy as Jauncey. Personally, I would have killed him the first time he swapped allegiance. Fuck Ray Winstone.
Eventually they're gonna let me out of this chair, comrade, and when they do, I'm gonna break your nose.
Anyway, the leader of the Russians is a woman in a bad wig called Ivarna Spankolot. and she directs Indy to go into the warehouse to retrieve something for them. Area 51? Indy realizes that he has been here before.
10 years ago, you were part of the team that examined it.
The contents of that box are highly magnetized. I need gunpowder.
So Indy makes a makeshift magnetic compass and finds a box, which contains a dead ET, so he didn't make it home after all. Anyway, Indy uses ET as a diversion and grabs a gun. But Mac decides to change sides.
Why, Mac?
Well, what can I say, Jonesy? I'm a capitalist.
So Indy drops the gun, and then makes a run for it. Go on, Indy, son. You're not too old for this shit. The next bit is classic Indy and feels just like something from the first 3 movies. In the first direct homage to the original, the Russians knock over a box and out pops the Ark of the Covenant. From the first movie. You know, they should have knocked over a second box and out pops Salah. There's a really good chase bit. Ruined by Mac, saying ye event not in.
Know him!
Over and
Know him!
over.
You don't know him! You don't know him! You don't know him! You don't know him! Jonesy!
Hi, Mac!
Shut the fuck up. Neither do you, Mac. You weren't in any of the other movies, for fuck right off. So Indy makes a break for it across the roof, followed by the... They have a scrap, and then accidentally set off a test rocket. What is it with those gophers? The rocket comes to a stop and Indy makes a break for it, ending up tramping through the desert, where he reaches a town, still being pursued by the Russians. Well, at least it looks like a town, except it's full of mannequins, and an atom bomb is about to go off, in a scene that's gone down in nearly as much infamy as when Rito shot first. Indy hides in a lead-lined fridge which gets blown clear. Somehow he doesn't get pulverized or decapitated in there. He must have it in the vegetable crisper. Ah, another furry gopher. So it's back for a debriefing and a good lather down. Ooh baby. Before being debriefed by Jim Robinson from Neighbors. Try not to have a heart attack and die, Jim. Indy is accused of being a Soviet sympathizer. After all, this is Cold War 1957, and the McCarthy witch hunt trials are underway. We also find out that Indy was part of the team which autopsied the alien in 1947, and that it was the Roswell alien.
I was tossed into a bus with blacked out windows and 20 people I wasn't allowed to speak to. Hauled out in the middle of the night in the middle of nowhere on some urgent recovery project and shown what? Pieces of wreckage and an intensely magnetic shroud covering mutilated remains. None of us was ever given the full picture.
He is told that he will be watched closely and is allowed to go back to school, where he is suspended for being a suspected red by his dean, who might as well be Marcus Brody. But for the purposes of this we will call him Marcus Morty. So Indy decides to go on a little day trip to Europe to get away for a while. We also learn his father Henry and Marcus Brody are both dead. So Indy gets on a train. A punk kid called Mudland Rando turns up on a bike and tells Indy that their mutual friend, Professor Oxley, is in trouble. I hope the platform runs out. So Mud recounts the tale of how Oxley went out hunting for crystal skulls in the lost city of Akator, or El Dorado, the city of gold.
The legend says that a crystal skull was stolen from Akator in the 15th or 16th century, and that whoever returns the skull to the city temple will be given control over its power.
Mud explains that his mother Marion went to find Ox and got kidnapped as well.
Now, Ox said he hid that skull someplace, and if my mom doesn't come up with it, they're gonna kill them both. Now, she said you'd help me.
Me? What's your mom's name again?
Mary? Mary Williams, you remember her?
Mud hands Indy a letter from Ox. They are then accosted by 2 Russian KGB agents, who want the letter.
We don't ask again, come now.
Or what?
Nice try, kid, but I think you just brought a knife to a gunfight.
Isn't that just like a wop? Brings a knife to a gunfight.
Mutt then starts a fight in the bar and they escape on the bike. With the Ruskies in hot pursuit. They drive into the college and the Ruskies crash their car into the statue of Marcus Brody. It back to Indy's house, where he attempts to translate the letter.
It's a riddle. Leave it to Ox to write a riddle in a dead language. Follow the lines in the earth only gods can read, which lead to Oriana's cradle, guarded by the living dead. He's talking about the Nazca lines.
So they jet on down to Peru to grab the skull. For some reason, Mutt takes his bike with him. Once there, Indy tells Mutt about the time he rode with Pancho Villa.
I rode with Pancho Villa. A couple of his guys spoke it.
Bullshit.
This is of course a reference to young Indy. If he gets time, he might regale Mutt with a time he slept with Mata Hari, rescued Charles de Gaulle, and befriended a big fat Belgian. Meanwhile, they are being watched by Indy's old double-crossing mate, Mac. Indy and Mutt then head to the local madhouse, where Ox was held for a time, to see if it yields any clues. They look around his cell and find a big clue on the floor. That's right. I said a big clue. So following the big steaming pile of clue on the floor, Indy and Mutt travel to a cemetery to look for the skull. Ox hid. Whilst looking around they are attacked by some pygmy dudes who shoot poison and blow darts. Indy pops up and blows one into the attacker's mouth, killing him. If he was stupid enough to dip both ends in poison, he deserved to die.
You're a part-time.
They find an entrance, and while Indy is retching around for a secret lever, Mutt gets bitten by a scorpion. I suppose this is a homage to Raiders when Satito gets attacked by spiders. Anyway, they next come across a seesaw, which they have a little play on. Pretty crappy trap really. I mean it's gone up at one end. Ah, I'm trapped. Oh. And finally they get to the burial chamber where they find the corpse of Francisco de Orellana, the famous Spanish explorer, Old Man Steptoe, and the crystal skull.
Believable. Cut across the grain. It's not possible even with today's technology it would shatter. Crystal's not magnetic. What is this thing?
You think this is the one from
Megator.
But the Ruskies are waiting for them outside. Damn Ruskies! So Indy is hauled into the jungle by the Ruskies, who now have the crystal skull Indy found.
You're lucky I turned up, Jonesy. They've think they wanted to blow your brains out. That's the third time I've saved your life.
Unshackle me, I'll give you a big hug. Eventually they're gonna let me out of this chair, comrade, and when they do, I'm gonna break your nose.
Comrade, you think this is about flags? About uniforms? You think this is about lines on a map?
It's just about money, isn't it?
Oh, only money. A gigantic pile of money.
Spankola explains that the crystal skull is alien in origin and that she intends to use it as a mind weapon against the West. She explains that the skull Indy found is the one stolen from Akator. Indy then meets Ox, who's crazier than a rat in a tin shit house. The Russians believe Ox will lead them to Akator, and they want Indy to decipher Ox's ramblings. To prove a point, Spankola subjects Indy to the power of Grey Skull. He's still not convinced he wants to help them, so they bring out Mutt's mother.
Indiana Jones. Time you showed up.
Mom!
Sweetheart.
Mom.
Marion Ravenwood. Indy changes his mind, but then Mutt engineers an escape. But Indy and Marion end up in quicksand. Marion drops a bombshell on Indy about who Mutt's father is.
His name is Henry.
Henry, good name.
He's your son.
Mutt throws Daddy his least favorite escape rope, a snake. The Ruskies catch up with him and they are bound and gagged in the back of a truck. They escape, and grab a boat on wheels. Mac turns out to be a double agent. Sounds like double Dutch to me. This bit of the film is like an episode of Scooby-Doo, where they keep losing the object to the bad guys and then get it back again, and then lose it again. They lose it. Get it back. Lose it again. Mud has a really fake-looking CGI fencing contest with Spank a lot, then gets taken by a vine. Time for bizarre animal cameo number 2. Say, is that the same capuchin from Night at the Museum? Suddenly Mud has developed the necessary upper body strength to swing through the trees like Tarzan. Was this an attempt to homage a 50s Tarzan movie? 'Cause it sucks. So we have a bit of dodgems next to a cliff. I don't know why, but this vine swinging makes me want to rip my electro voice box out in shame. Anyway, Mud and the monkeys come to Indy's aid and they get the skull back. What this action scene really amounts to is dumbing down. Nothing feels quite real. It doesn't feel like Indy. It would probably sit better in a National Treasure movie. They could have at least killed one CGI monkey, not like it's real or anything. They crash and are attacked by a bunch of giant ants. Raiders equals snakes. Temple equals bugs. Crusade equals rats. Skull equals giant ants. The rusty captain catches up with Indy again after their Area 51 encounter and they fight. Ox clears a little ring for them with the power of Grayskull. Go on, Indy son. You're not too old for this shit. Rusty Captain gets grabbed by the ants and it's down the hole he goes. Indy retrieves his hat. Nice scene. So they get back in the boat car and go over the edge of the cliff, twanging a wrench back into the face of the Roosties.
3 times it drops.
After the log flume, they reach the bottom and Ox spots a face in the rock and tells them the entrance to Akator is behind the waterfall.
I have to return it.
Why you?
Because it told me to.
They make their way through a passage, and loads of undead tribal people start appearing from the walls and chase them. They get caught. An Ox uses the power of Grayskull to tame the undead tribes. They reach the central temple and the next puzzle is like a crystal maze challenge.
Here we are, in the Aztec jungle. That's 5 seconds inside the crystal rain. Well done.
They fall in onto a rapidly decreasing staircase. Hold on. I thought Indy said these were all undead warriors protecting Akator. So how has Spanklet managed to shoot them all dead?
Oriana's cradle, guarded by the living dead.
So confused. Last time I checked, undead meant undead. Unless she shot them all in the head. Anyway, next Indy and Co. find a treasure room full of priceless artifacts from many different dynasties. Mac nearly comes in his pants. Finally they end up in some kind of throne room, with a bunch of crystal skeletons sitting in chairs.
Imagine what they could tell us.
I can't imagine. Neither could the humans that built this temple, and neither can you.
Belief, Dr. Jones, is a gift you have yet to receive.
And the room starts spinning. You can pretty much guess what's going to happen next. Indy and Co. escape, leaving Spanklet to utter,
I want to know. Tell me. I'm ready. I want to know.
Mac doesn't leave until he gets some treasure.
I'm gonna be alright.
What does he mean? Alright. He's going to die, isn't he? Finally. Pointless animal cameo number 3. A really dodgy looking encounters of the third kind style alien. With a look on its face like it's stifling a big shit. And finally it's time for Spankle to suffer a really violent Indy baddie style death. Let's see. We've had melting faces. Head exploding. Man aging rapidly. Really? Is that it? That is so lame. Indy and company watch the flying saucer take off. Ox and Indy give us the only explanation we are due to get.
Where did they go? Space?
Not into space. Into the space between spaces.
Knowledge was their treasure.
Space between the space. Knowledge equals treasure. Well, that explains everything. Back at college, Indy is reinstated as associate dean. Finally, Indy and Marion tie the knot. Mutt nearly gets the hat. The end.
Now, what shall we talk about?
Where to begin? Okay. What's good? The one problematic thing about an Indy movie 20 years after the last one is, could a 65-year-old Harrison Ford still cut it? Playing a 58-year-old Indy in 1957. Well, in a word.
You know, for an old man, you ain't bad in a fight.
Yes. Ford is excellent. He looks fit and athletic. Performs most of his own stunts, and even reportedly squeezed back in to the same pair of trousers from The Last Crusade. The failings of this movie aren't his doing, and for the most part, he is a good sport and spouts all of the gibberish lines with gusto.
Oh. You mean that Air Force fiasco in 47?
Some of the better action scenes feel like a real Indy movie. They are exciting and fit the tone exactly. Take Indy's fight with a much superior Russian captain. It has shades of Raiders all over it. And the fight against Bomber from Mark Reader Sentet. The first 3/4 of the movie are reasonable and fit the template of an Indy movie. Indy on the Hunt for the Lost City of El Dorado sounds interestingly different enough from the previous Indy films to work. They capture the 50s Cold War setting well enough. Indy himself seems like something of a relic in this post-nuclear world. Also, they cover the Cold War without raising Western ideology over its Eastern equivalent. So the Ruskies are looking for the ultimate mind control weapon. They even go as far as poking fun at the Americans for their paranoid witch hunt of notable figures, like Dr. Jones. Didn't he win loads of medals in the war?
I got a bad feeling about this.
I've got a bad feeling about this.
What's bad? What have you got? Ford is famous for saying about the Star Wars dialogue, "George, you can type this shit, but you sure as hell can't say it." Well, George did type some shit. The problem with Skull is it feels like a mashup of lots and lots of incomplete ideas, which don't sit that well together. Area 51, A-Bomb, Cold War, El Dorado, Gophers, Mind Control, Marriage, Monkeys, Offspring, Reds, Skull, Dead Dad. It feels like 3 stories in one. The Hunt for Crystal Skull, Area 51/Roswell, El Dorado. The movie really begins to lose it after the duo get caught at the graveyard. The reintroduction of Marion is a bit unbelievable. Karen Allen seems to have forgotten how to act. The quicksand snake reprieve is just embarrassing. The CGI jungle convoy just looks really bad. The monkeys swinging through the trees are like what the fuck. Fencing on the bonnet of a moving car. The alien reveal. And finally the wedding. Some of the scenes make me want to swallow my tongue with embarrassment. Characters. Indy works. Mutt is really annoying. Marion comes across like she hasn't acted in over 20 years. Mac shouldn't be in this film. How many times did he change sides? The Indy character we all know would have dispensed with him after the first time. So why didn't he? Bad writing. And Mac basically served as the Jar Jar Binks comedy relief. Jim Broadbent and John Hurt are basically Marcus Brody and Indy's dad. As dean of the college and reluctant company on Indy's adventure, Irina Spocko does not have any presence as the main aggressor with her bad wig and cod
Where is
Russian
it you would
accent.
imagine I am from, Dr. Jones?
Dr. Jones. She is no tote. Plus Indy can't really punch her in the face because she is a lady. Rehash music. Even the great compo John Williams dropped the ball on this film. Apparently there is an original soundtrack in here, somewhere. A motif unique to Skull. But the only music I can find that sounds new is the music which accompanies Spocko and Skull. It's certainly original but memorable. No chance. Everything else is rehashed. Even this dramatic scene at the end. Recognize the music?
Knowledge was their treasure.
It's the same.
Just like your father. Giddy as a schoolboy.
Son of A.
Why don't you stick around, Junior?
I don't know. Why didn't you, Dad?
The fact that this movie is really a thinly veiled attempt to finally introduce the Jones Jr. successor undermines it all the way through. After the death of River Phoenix is always at the forefront of your mind, but Mutt is a complete non-entity at the beginning, middle and end, to the point of being annoying, which makes his moment of glory, fencing on top of a car and swinging through the trees like Tarzan, hard to swallow. Plus he looks like a total douche. It's clear that Shia LaBeouf was Spielberg Flavor of the Month at the time of making this. But I wouldn't be surprised if they make a part 5 and recast the Jones Jr. part. LaBeouf got a lot of criticism for his role in this. Seriously, is this guy the next Indy Jones?
Junior?
Connections. Back in the early 90s, Lucas was going about taking apart Indy's backstory by connecting him to every famous event and person of the early 20th century. If you hated the way in Star Wars that Anakin built C-3PO or the Boba and Jango Fett family unit, then you would hate young Indy. So Lucas has units of young Indy to shift. So he includes references to it in Skull. I rode with Pancho Villa. Did he? Let's go and buy young Indy Blu-rays and find out. Well, don't, cause it sucks really hard. He also autopsied the aliens at Roswell. What was the point of confirming this fact? Indy autopsied a real alien body but didn't seem to be too bothered by the notion of extraterrestrial life. So why did it matter he had studied them before Akator? Unless this knowledge was going to be used later to defeat or communicate with them. It wasn't. Like signs. With water. Swim away Meryl. Jones' character works because he is the everyman. He could be any of us. He rarely has a plan. Isn't that good at fighting. Blunders in where others fear to tread. But somehow comes through.
Not the man I knew 10 years ago.
It's not the years, it's the mileage.
He doesn't need to have been involved in every key event in history. What next? Indy 5. Set in the 60s. Indy influences the Beatles. Opens at Woodstock and lands on the moon. It could happen. CGI. Before this movie came out, Lucas and Spielberg said that they weren't going to fall in the trap of making a CGI action movie which didn't fit in with the tone of the first trilogy. That all of the stunts would be done by real people. Admirable. Except what they really meant to say was all of the stunts would be done by real people. Against a green screen, some bits of this film look really fake. Especially the jungle pursuit. And fight. An alien temple. You see. Indie films, although about fantastical religious events, work because they are very grounded in real action setups. Like their B-movie predecessors. You want a room full of snakes, or a tunnel full of rats. You'll have to get a lot of real snakes or rats and fill up a room with them. But now CGI means you can have a killer ant hive without employing one ant. But it will look really fake. And what is it with all of the weird CGI animal cameos? What were they thinking? If you can't get a real gopher to pop out on command, don't have any. They couldn't even let one CGI monkey die. Not one. Alien concepts. They just don't fit in the Indy universe. At all. It feels wrong. It might have worked if they hadn't revealed them so obviously, and revealed them to look so damn stupid. The same stupid aliens that Spielberg pushes in every other of his sci-fi films. Why not just have had them disappear, but made it settle?
Where did they go? Space?
Not into space. Into the space between spaces.
Violence. The really underlying thing that's wrong with this film is a lack of gratuitous violence. In this bland age of violence with consequence, where we watch someone shoot a gun but cut straight to the person lying on the floor, as we aren't allowed to show a blood pack exploding on a shirt anymore. Only the after consequences. Skull seems like an action movie with the action sterilized. See Batman Dark Knight for more of this trimmed-down violence. Remember the face shot in Raiders? The heart ripping from Temple? The melting faces. Exploding heads. Now look at Skull. Pan away before the killer shots. Some Russian CGI men falling off a cliff far off in the distance. And the Indy money shot moment of a grisly baddie death. Literally just goes up in a gentle puff of smoke. The ant kills are the only ones which come close. How did they get through the censor? Maybe the 80s were just too violent for our post-millennium paranoid knife and gun culture, and some PG movies from then would probably not get made now. But look at the violent video games kids are playing now, and how is that any less violent? Soviets. The 50s Cold War setting meant that the times had to move on, and out went the Nazis and in came the Soviets. But they just weren't as rooted in evil as the Nazis.
Impossible? What do you say, Jones? Ready to go down in history?
As what? A Nazi stooge like you.
The Nazis?
You don't need a backstory for your baddie once you see this symbol. Period. In fact, I was kind of rooting for the Ruskies. A little. If the Ruskies can successfully infiltrate America and then Area 51, then good on them. Red Dawn anyone? It's not a total lost cause and with a few tweaks, could easily gain another star on IMDb. How to improve Skull. Number 1. Get rid of the Soviets and bring back the Nazi underground Fourth Reich movement. On the hunt for artifacts to begin a new rise to power again.
Germany has declared war on the Jones boys.
2. Dump Mac's character. He serves no purpose. Indy doesn't even like him. 3. Cut reference to Dr. Jones being one of the doctors at the Roswell incident. We have already had some backstory established about him being a war hero. Leave it there. 4. Get rid of the CGI animals. 5. Put some gratuitous violence back in there. Have the main baddie turn inside out at the end and have their organs spray all over the camera. Do it in CGI if needs be. 6. Limit Mutt's participation in this to just being introduced. It's Indiana Jones, not son of.
Junior?
7. No alien reveals. We don't get to see what's in the Area 51 box. Cut the autopsy scene. Just have the temple collapse and a bright light fly away. Leave something to the imagination. Finally 8. Just have Indy and Marion start seeing each other. The wedding is too obvious an ending. End the movie with Indy and Mutt out on their first adventure together, about to grab the idol from the plinth. In closing, Skull could have been much better than it was. It wasn't a terrible movie, but it wasn't good either. It was the sum of its parts, and its parts included writing by George Lucas. It shines in places and feels like old Indy, but then it goes and ruins it with scenes that make you squirm with more embarrassment than watching sex on the TV with your parents present. If they do another Indy film, they really need to dispense with the excessive CGI, pointless characters, reintroduce the uber violence, and find a good Earth-based story. Otherwise Indy might as well just belong in a museum. However, being they chose Shia LaBeouf as his successor, they might want to get some top men to pack all of those pre-production notes in a big wooden crate. Mark do not open. Unbury it in a warehouse. So on.